everybody, and welcome to Reed's Spider-Man Crawlspace Edition. Check us out at SpidermanCrawlspace.com. Well, guys, here it is. After weeks and weeks and weeks and months and months and months, I finally get to review the conclusion to what did Peter do in the anniversary, kind of 50 years after Gwen Stacy died, issue 26 of Amazing Spider-Man. And boy, everybody, are you ready? Because I got so many cons for this issue, you're going to wonder if I actually will ever read the book ever again. That's right. Let's get going to exactly what happened with Zeb Wells' is most leaked about issue comic in years with Amazing Spider-Man number 26, number 956. So here we go, guys. The pros. I don't have very many. I will say, though, the best pros out of this actually are the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man. We actually have Reed pretty much talking about what they've been, that they've been friends for a year, pretty much family, that they need to help out, and they understand why Peter was acting the way he was when he got back from, as I'll call it, Earth 555, since, of course, the first appearance of Benjamin J. Rabin was, of course, in Amazing Spider-Man 555. So it's actually pretty good. And I also like the fact that Reed, within a couple of panels, basically realizes the Kurma Kakarjin, which is actually a Mayan dragon from a Hispanic myth in South America, is actually using math, and he actually defeats it in a very inventive and very Fantastic Four way. All the characters are actually on point there, including how Norman Osborn reacts, finding out about how his system's doing it, and even how he reveals, with, of course, the big thing with Kamala Khan's death, Miss Marvel, and the fact that the reason why she was there was not to try to make things better, but basically spy on him, which really hurts them. The fact classic is, no matter how much I do, I'm always just going to be the bad guy. That's actually the best things of this issue, because I can't even get into the art. So let's just get over this, guys, and go straight to the cons. First of all, the cons. This storyline was basically written to tell the point of not having Peter and Mary Jane together. And no matter what, the story constantly relied on past storylines, from Avengers 200 to WandaVision to more and more pieces about exactly to make it work, when the prime example was to keep Mary Jane and Peter apart. It's really bad, even when you peel away all the layers of basically how this story was structured, who Paul Jeremiah Rabin really is from Earth 555, and exactly how he worked and existed here in 616 is ridiculous. Because even the biggest character assassination, of course, is Mary Jane, when she says, hey, yeah, he was hard on himself, and yeah, he let his father in his universe, of course, kill billions of people before he realized it was a bad thing, and then took care of his father. He's so pathetic, Peter. Doesn't that sound familiar? And we have these two kids we found that for some reason look like us both, but that isn't a red flag or doesn't make sense. So you know what? I'm going to stay with him no matter what, even though you make a good example points. The fact is, because we saw him die on Earth 555, so there's no way we'll have to worry about this again. Basically, they reveal that Mary Jane has a battered spouse syndrome, because that's exactly the whole little thing. I have to do it for the kids. Yes, I'm in an abusive relationship, or one that's a very toxic relationship, even though there's no physical or verbal problems, but it might come back to haunt me later. Everybody tells me that it's going to be bad, but I'm not going to listen to it, because I have a feeling everything will be okay. No. And like I said, even with the artwork, it's very inconsistent. You have color changes, spot switches, everything from, we finally see the flashback, of course, Paul punching Peter with "that's enough," because, of course, he called on him being a murderer from his own father. And the fact is, he switched colors, he switched clothes, Mary Jane changes hairstyles, Paul changes facial hair expressions, and so forth. The issue is actually not well done. Even when they do the battle between the Kramargadrin and the Fantastic Four and the Gold Goblet, you can see a couple of times that the dragon's structure and his Mayan symbols change a couple of times too, which keeps it really off. Also, there's one thing, just before, of course, we get the big reveal that when Rabin actually kills Mary Jane, which turns to be Kamala Khan, he appears in front of her, yet he's then behind her as she stabs him with the sword. So the truth is, we have the panels by both artists, by John Romita Jr. especially, just cannot seem to consist about who's supposed to be on what strange, what they're supposed to do, and inconsistency. Also, the emotional thing. Believe it or not, the only one that actually shows emotional, actual regret of anything is Norman Osborn, because Norman Osborn's the star of Amazing Spider-Man, everybody, right? He's the most amazing person ever. Yeah, it's horribly inconsistent, and I'll get into the main part of what the story worked here with, of course, the death of Miss Marvel. It's, first of all, in very bad taste. Why, it is definitely Kamala would do something like this, being available, would do the good thing, sacrificing herself for somebody like Mary Jane, even though she didn't really understand who she was or the fact that Spider-Man was Peter Parker, since, of course, her memory was erased again a couple of years ago. The truth is, it's done in poor taste. It's done basically, as they say, fridge the woman character to make the other things look good. She wasn't used in the storyline. Even when we finally get the answers of exactly why she was interning, which was of course explained in her miniseries during Dark Web a few months ago, it's actually revealed that she was just spying on Norman Osborn and used her personal charm to get the interview to become the intern, while everybody else thought she had lost her mind, and basically say, but there's some good we can do with it, when it's like, hee hee hee, snicker snicker, Norman Osborn I don't trust, so henceforth I'm going to use it so I can spy on him, because I don't know Peter Parker, who gets a job here, is actually really Spider-Man, who's also keeping an eye on him, but I don't know that stuff. Basically, the plot keeps driving the plot to make the stories work, and to work, and to work, and to work. And it is horribly done and thing. I know a lot of my fellow reviewers and readers, of course, explained enough about the death of Ms. Marvel, and I think it is honestly the worst thing written. Even if they are going to bring her back in a few months in a mini-series by some of her most main writers, including the original creator, to get her all set up for the Marvels movie just in time for the mini-series, it's poorly done. It's done to do shock. It's done to actually get hatred and other things. And the fact of how it's spun off into things on other social media channels who actually are happy and celebrating for the death of a, diverse character also shows this was horribly thought out and done, and not thinking it would go into this thing. And as they say, when you're getting the most hateful and racist people out there, and just to hear them cheer you on, you've done bad with this story, which really falls on Zeb Wells and, of course, Nick Lowe and the rest of the Spider-Man offices for making this happen. Including some more cons here I will actually get to in a second here, but let's really focus on, of course, the person who really screwed this all up, which is Paul. The fact that we've been constantly thrown about why Mary Jane stays with them mostly for the kids, even getting the storylines, even in the post-apocalypse of Earth 555, we pretty much are seeing constantly that Paul brought everything on his own. He did everything. He's, of course, caused all this issue. He knew Peter was Spider-Man. He knew all these other things were happening, including Gus the Debt Collector, who was the secret serial killer. Of course, giving Mary Jane these powers, which, as we found with Raven, actually didn't work, because first she attacks him in anger when, of course, she reveals the big elephant in the room and the kids were never real, and like an Etcher sketch, basically shook it and the kids disappear. Doesn't mean the emotional damage isn't there, but it just shows exactly it had no point to it, which leads right to the main point of Benjamin J. Rabbit, aka the emissary. Why did he have to do any of this? Every time he thought he had a plan, he'd either get killed or get knocked, and he'd come back like, I had that plan wrong. It's actually supposed to be this way. Oop, I screwed up that plan again. It's got to go this way. Why did he really need it? If anything, of doing an emotional attack, he would have actually made it to a point where he could have made the children disappear, as he shows, with a snap of a finger. He could have done it on Earth 555 when he first showed up there before everything happened with Paul. Or he could have even said some other things like, you're my son from this world, but you know what? I'm glad I didn't have children, or didn't do this, blah, blah, blah. And of course, Mary Jane's reaction is horrible, but pretty much nothing serves anything just to basically piss off Mary Jane and Peter fans and marriage fans of all that, because pretty much is they serve no purpose but to do this. And as people say, this is Mary Jane's supervillain origin, or her superhero. This is Paul basically showing that he's going to be still around by the end of it, and he'll probably become a villain, or the new version of the emissary, trying to reverse everything, of course, because he knows everything about the hieroglyphics. But after about 2.5 billion people get killed, that's when I'm going to step in and say my dad's doing something wrong on my Earth. Whew boy, whew boy. How bad is it, guys? I'm going to tell you what my grade for this is: an F. Yep, solid F. Because even with the one thing with the stuff with the Fantastic Four and some other pieces, it doesn't work to save the storyline, because it is honestly one of the worst written stories I've read in several years. Is it the worst run of Spider-Man? Oh no, you're talking about a guy that went through Homeless Peter, Exploding Airplane, Mary Jane Believed Dead, Sins Past, and more. I've been through a lot of crap. So I've kind of survived this, but do I not like any of this and what's happened? You got that right. And now let's get into what I would like to call, did anything make sense in the end? Where I'm going to reveal all the plots that have been going on since issue 1. Guys, I have my little iPad here, a Google Doc here, to explain all the plot points that happen in here. And of course, I have some nice witty remarks to go on. So number 1, who is Paul? Well, his real name is actually Paul Jeremiah Raven. He was the son of Raven in this alternate universe, which we'll call, of course, Earth 555, to mark the appearance of Raven's first area. Basically, as he watched as billions of people were murdered by his father before he realized that what they were doing was wrong, because he was so excited about all the math and other things coming there into the emissary. So of course he killed his father off, and of course leaving this post-apocalyptic world. So when he actually got the 616, where he never existed, as he tells Peter, I'm actually happy with this universe, I don't exist, and I can take all the fans of my father and actually make it work. So basically he explains the point that he got all this money in Venmo because thanks to having all the information, he could actually hack all of Benjamin Rabin's accounts and get all this money. That's actually how he's supposed to have the Venmo account that actually pays the debt collector several issues ago. Next one, who were the kids? Well, pretty much they were fake kids created by Mayan magic to look like Paul and Mary Jane. That's why, of course, there were inconsistencies early on when, of course, Owen, as we finally got his name a few issues ago, looked like Peter, was this thing changed to make it look like a young Paul. And if you look at the consistency of the artwork between Rabin, Paul, and a few other things, Owen actually looks like a younger version of Mary Jane. But of course, they had to keep them chained together, as Rabin explains, to keep them emotionally done to accept them. Why? We have absolutely no idea, because apparently Rabin could sync on these kids a long time ago. Nothing ever raised in their head to the fact that they weren't chained until Owen hugged Mary Jane from, as we found out in issue 25. But basically, all this was is they were basically set to break them both, and then of course, for reasons, basically, he shakes the Etch-a-Sketch and the children disappear in front of Paul to their shock. Also, of course, there were tons of flags at the fact they always kept talking about Rabin being the scribble man, as in he scribbled in symbols on his body and scribbled in things. So that was a constant thing that the kids were done. And here's one thing, guys. I don't appreciate kids being used in stories to show tragedy, but when they weren't real to begin with, and you stole it basically from Avengers 200 and also the ones Easton and WandaVision, which of course Zeb Wells was involved with, yeah, it's really bad. What about Peter's debts? So basically, is when he was gone, Peter revived. All the debts fell back on Aunt May, supposedly, so they had the finances. And basically, she was led to believe by the hospital, because, you know, the healthcare system is evil, everybody. Remember that. They're worse than Baron Zemo or Doctor Doom. Basically, we're trying to get all this money extorted out of May. Rumor has it that basically Otto used hacking ability, since, of course, it was revealed back in the one-shot with Dr. Octopus and Aunt May that he had put in the money and the treatment to get Peter taken care of, and apparently there was some money from Beyond that took care of also Peter's, of course, hospital stay money. So the truth is, the debt collection basically was yanked to get, from what the rumor fact is just to get it so that way it can lure Spider-Man out, so then that way it would cause problems with Aunt May, so then he can get on the tech suit for reasons. And the fact that Gus the serial killer just happened to be of course, coincidence, since he was assigned to the debt collection on that. And supposedly, we will talk about Gus again in the Amazing Spider-Man annual in a couple months. More on that later. So why did Paul punch Peter? Because Peter called him the son of a murderer, which is pretty much true. Why did Mary Jane stay with Paul? Basically saying that for the kids that weren't real, and Paul was full of guilt, and after being stranded for 4 years on Earth 555, felt bad about them, and basically thought he was more pathetic than Peter, so stayed with them. That's character assassination, everybody. Why was Aunt May mad at Peter? Basically for shoving Norman Osborn out of the apartment, making her believe that he didn't take care of any of his hospital bills, and got wrenched and didn't want to talk to everybody after everything fell apart with Mary Jane when Paul came over and stuff. So Aunt May basically was mad at him. That's why. Why were the superheroes not happy with Peter? Well, despite what happened with the Fantastic Four and Captain America, basically Captain America said, we're just going to leave him alone until he figures it out. So all the other superheroes basically gave Peter the middle finger and walked away until recent issue. Why was Johnny mad? Well, because he was out of control with powers because of Dan Slott's storylines and not knowing what was going on with Ryan North's storylines. So basically it sums up as Peter says, we got to think about this now. Ben says, you sure about that, Spider-Man? Why be smart now? As he jokes about it too. Also, Reed basically pretty much says that they have been family, and for years we understand, let's get over it and stop the bad guys, which is in character. So what did Peter basically do? Well, pretty much nothing. He buried his costume for reasons outside of York, Pennsylvania, because it exploded and National Security was after him. He stole an item that had to help Norman get into this other universe, even though apparently only 12 hours had passed. It was 4 years in this other universe that Paul knew about, and basically Mary Jane wondered why Peter never showed up was because Paul knew about this, and even though he told her there was a time difference, she didn't care. Why is Miss Marvel there? Honestly, the basically reason was she saw the explosion when Peter went back to the Earth 555, saw Norman Osborn, and decided using her charm and needed for an internship, decides to charm out and use her experience, of course, as it's revealed at the beginning of issue 26, to get this internship to keep an eye on Norman, and excused her friend, saying she thinks she can do some good in the world, when it was really to keep an eye on Norman. Why did Peter have this great apartment? So basically Norman felt bad about him, basically got him this apartment, even though didn't really know about the debt collection situations. It gets explained in the Gold Goblin mini that basically after he decides to give Peter the job, but also decides to let him do whatever it is, give a thing, and he's paid off all his debts, so everything is square with them. And he says, you do what you want to do, and that's it. So basically Norman said, here's a big check, I paid all the bills. The hospital said, okay, boy, what happened to that debt collector? Don't know, but hey, you paid the bill, we don't care anymore. So what was really Rabin's plan? Basically to just become Web. And basically, no matter what he did, the rules kept changing, even way back in 555, where they say, hey, I'm not giving to you, you're not clean shaved, and you're not have a haircut, you dumb hippie. I won't give you the power, but I'm keep giving you a chance because of the Sunblood. Okay, not the Sunblood, now Mary Jane, or the Scarlet Woman. Okay, I'm going to give you change. That didn't work. I had to know it. No, I didn't. I had to die. Now I'm back to life. Now I'm good. Now I'm set. And now I finally killed Mary Jane, but it's actually Ms. Marvel pretending to be it from her powers, which she hasn't used in years because she had to give those up. But as a result, basically the gods say, hey, nope, sorry, that's not the real Mary Jane. We're going to go kill you now because of that thing. Yeah, she still has her powers with her, jackpox tricks, but we're basically saying, we're done with you, and he melts like the Wicked Witch of the West. So what are the slot, and speaking of which, what are the slot powers? Basically, it's Mayan healing energy used to mark people, which is what Rabin actually explains. And since they're almost unpredictable, even though they use the jackpot, the truth is it's not focused correctly, but the Mayan energy basically functions things on a quantum level, so it can change everything, as we saw in the miniseries, where Mary Jane can have the powers of Captain Universe and get all powers back, and apparently can do bats where it can cause death if she gets the 3 skulls, but not how she can get Gath. And basically, after blasting her, she does it again and heals him. So very unreliable powers. So is anything really Peter's fault? No, it's Nick Lowe, Tom Brevoort, C.B. Straczynski, and of course, Zeb Wells, who are at fault for all this. That's all that information. So stop lines that haven't been done. How do Mary Jane set up Paul at 616 and how the children were just there, never going to be explained, possibly 27. Kamala's death, miniseries fallen friend by all the creators, but we'll have her back by the Marvels movie in November. Ben Reilly will be talked about in the annual, and after the Kraven Dr. Octopus storyline will supposedly, rumor has it, explain what happened to Gus after Madeline Pryor took his soul. When will Peter stop being a loser? When editorial says so. And what's the fate of Paul? Unfortunately, we're stuck with him. Most likely, this is year 2's plan of Zeb Wells, if he lands that long, to basically make him the next emissary. And that's it, everybody. I'm really, really tired, and I think I'm on my 4th cup of coffee after all this, so I think I'm going to go outside and walk for a bit. So I hope you've enjoyed this review, and I will give the big answer. Yes, I will be sticking around. I will still be reviewing. I'll be back for a couple weeks to issue 27 as the Dr. Octopus and Kraven storyline begins. But on the other note, guys, I think this was an absolutely horrible, horrible storyline, very offensive, poorly executed, and to all my fellow reviewers who are dropping off, or other reviewers from, of course, my putty Chi-Town, to Mark, to Kelly. Guys, it's been a wonderful journey. I will take those pains and symbols upon you, and I will continue the review for everything to go through this. So, guys, Painbot will continue doing our reviews. Because why? I actually have fun doing these reviews, but at this point in time, I've become the new younger JR. I read these books because I review them and do it because, honestly, I think this is a horrible storyline, and I'm looking forward to when this creative team is gone. Well, more the writer. I love you, John Romita Jr., but he really stepped off on this one too. But John, thank you for always being there to at least make it look like Spider-Man. There's my other pro, everybody. And I am out of here, so I will see everybody later on the Spider-Man Crawl Space. Check me out for any of my other thought and process on our Discord, and definitely look at our upcoming reviews and the podcasts and interviews here, and for more on SpidermanCrawlspace.com. And on that note, guys, I am out of here.